Okay, let's dive in. Today we're tackling some pretty compelling source material. Excerpts from a book called Joy and Purpose. And our mission, really, is to unpack the core system this book proposes.
Yeah, it's about achieving what the author calls unparalleled purposeful productivity and also maximal joy.
Right. Through deeply intentional living. That's the key phrase.
It is. And
Wow.
it's a bold claim right from the start, isn't it?
Yeah.
The author attributes their own significant productivity, their ability to navigate massive challenges, specifically to living by this system described here. It's presented as the fundamental reason they've, consistently outperformed and stayed resilient.
Which immediately makes you lean in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just abstract self-help theory.
No, not at all.
It's framed as a promise of a practical framework, something designed to connect that fundamental why down to the actions you take every single day.
And with tangible results, supposedly, in
Yeah.
both your output and your actual, experience of joy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for you listening right now, we're going to try and lay out that framework, see what actionable insights kind of jump out.
Okay, so stepping into the core ideas. The first big piece is intentionality.
Right.
The source draws a really clear line between living life according to a consciously chosen purpose and just, drifting.
It instantly brought to mind that scene, Alice in Wonderland, where she asks the Cheshire Cat which path to take.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
He asks where she wants to go. She says she doesn't much care. And he says,
Then it doesn't much matter which way you go.
perfect.
Precisely. And the source uses that exact exchange to underscore the point. It also offers a more modern analogy. Autonomous robots. Like, a robot needs explicit programming, a purpose, defined parameters, a set of actions to navigate and achieve a goal, right? Like getting somewhere efficiently while following rules.
Sure.
Without that programming, it just performs random actions, and that leads to random, often undesirable outcomes.
And the implication is that most of us are essentially unprogrammed robots. Or maybe Alice without a destination.
Kind of, yeah. We drift, make impulsive decisions, and then wonder how we ended up in situations we never intended, hitting obstacles that felt, unavoidable.
Because that fundamental intentionality is missing.
Exactly. That's the argument.
Right. Now, the book couples intentionality with purpose and joy, and it uses happiness and joy pretty much interchangeably.
It does. And the ultimate overarching purpose presented is simply to maximize joy.
Okay.
But this is where it gets really interesting. The book doesn't suggest you maximize joy by, chasing fleeting pleasures or trying to feel joyful all the time.
No. How then?
Instead, it argues that true, enduring joy is actually a result. It comes from making incremental progress towards goals you genuinely believe are worthwhile.
Ah. Okay, so it's an outcome, not the target itself.
Exactly. Therefore, maximizing joy requires intentionally identifying what is best and most valuable, consciously choosing to become the ideal version of yourself, and then consistently working towards those things. Joy is the outcome of a life well lived according to a chosen purpose.
Okay, so intentionality, driven by the purpose of maximizing joy through worthwhile progress. How does this source actually build the structure to do that, practically?
That's the framework. The book lays out 6 interconnected components.
6, okay.
Purpose, qualities, values, goals, tasks, and beliefs. Think of it like a cascade almost, connecting that high-level transcendent purpose all the way down to your daily actions. And the author positions this system as the secret sauce that enabled their claimed success and resilience against opposition.
Okay, so let's unpack each piece, starting at the top. Purpose.
Right. Purpose is the apex, the why you are, essentially. It's the most important piece, and its influence dictates everything that flows beneath it.
And as we said, the specific purpose highlighted here is maximizing joy.
That's the one the source focuses on, yes. The insight here is that without defining this highest level why, everything else just lacks direction, lacks ultimate meaning.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Which leads to qualities, how you are. These are the single words describing the ideal person you aspired to be, right? Like courageous, disciplined.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Just saying you want to be courageous isn't enough to actually change your behavior.
Right, you need more than just the word.
You do. And this is where the framework provides concrete tools. You need to define principles and rules for each quality to make them actionable.
Okay, principles.
Yeah.
Those are the more generalized behavioral descriptions.
Yes. They offer broader guidance. The source suggests rewriting dictionary definitions in your own simple terms, and crucially, writing them as if you are the quality right now.
Oh, interesting. Not, I will try to be honest, but...
I am honest. Or a principle for honesty might be something like, I do not lie. Simple, Direct.
And the rules get even more granular. Specific situations.
Far more. Rules are specific behaviors for specific situations. They are literally solutions you've worked out ahead of time for how the ideal version of yourself would act in common scenarios.
So you kind of pre-decide.
Exactly. You list significant situations, things that come up often, and define the ideal behavior concisely.
The examples from the source were good here. Like, for generosity, rules could be as simple as, I put the toilet seat down.
Or, when offered the last donut, I decline. It sounds trivial, but it connects a high-level quality to a concrete, everyday action.
Right. And it showed how you can work backward, too, didn't it?
Yeah, that was interesting. If you recognize a behavior you don't want, like, say, yelling at your child when they ignore you, you define the rule you do want.
Like, when my child ignores me, I calmly walk over and have a chat.
Right. And from that specific rule, you can derive the principle, maybe, I handle frustration calmly, and then identify the overarching quality, I am patient.
So it's an iterative loop, kind of refining how you embody your desired self in the real world.
Exactly. The insight is, your ideal qualities aren't just vague aspirations. They become defined by specific pre-committed actions in identifiable situations.
Okay, so purpose guides qualities, which are made actionable through principles and rules. What's the next layer down?
Values. This is about what is important to you.
Right.
And our, increasingly complex and information-saturated lives, values are presented as the essential compass. They help you recognize and prioritize what truly matters.
Right, helping you sort through all the noise.
Yeah, and resist that default human tendency to prioritize what's easy or fast over what's genuinely meaningful long-term.
And the book emphasizes that values need a ranking. That seems important.
Absolutely crucial, according to the source. A clear, prioritized ranking allows you to consciously elevate seemingly small daily actions that align with your highest-ranking values. It gives you a concrete method for evaluating choices. Is this aligned with value #1 or value #5?
Okay, and this section introduces the concept of the Pareto distribution.
Yeah.
The 80-20 rule applied to value in life.
Fascinating idea, isn't it? The claim is that a disproportionately small number of things account for the majority of the value experience.
Like the classic 80% of results from 20% of effort.
Exactly. The source uses examples like wealth distribution, most wealth held by a few people, or even things like movie watching time, mostly spent on a few favorite movies.
It mentions some extreme examples, like the Elon Musk wealth comparison.
Yeah, those extreme examples, like someone being, millions of times wealthier than average, are used to highlight the potential scale of this distribution.
Suggesting the gap between average joy and exceptional joy could be similarly vast.
That's the implication. But the actionable insight for you is that not all tasks, relationships, or opportunities are created equal. The 80-20 principle means recognizing that a tiny percentage of things in your life will yield the vast majority of your results and your joy.
So the trick is identifying and focusing on those few high-impact things.
That's the goal. And the source adds that value is tied to cost. Highly valuable things aren't cheap, generally, but they aren't interchangeable. You're optimizing for the highest net benefit minus cost.
Okay.
And here's a vital point. The true high value of important things often only becomes clear much later, like after you've invested the time or effort.
So it's not always obvious up front.
Rarely is for the really big stuff. This is why intentionally seeking out high-value activities guided by your prioritized values is critical. You learn to appraise value more accurately over time by investing in what you believe is worthwhile and then observing and correcting based on the actual outcomes. You get better at seeing potential value.
Okay. So values give you the compass for navigating choices and prioritizing based on true long-term benefit, even when it's not immediately obvious.
Exactly. Next up. Beliefs.
Beliefs, okay.
These are your estimates of how reality works. The cause and effect relationships you perceive. Think of them as your internal recipes for getting specific outcomes.
So beliefs inform how to get what you want, and maybe even help clarify what you want by showing possibilities and costs.
Precisely. And this is absolutely key for prioritization. Beliefs allow you to calculate the potential net benefit of different actions. Remember the Pareto idea?
Yeah, the few actions with huge results.
Right. But those high-impact actions rarely look like the most valuable options up front. Correct beliefs and accurate mental model help you perceive those long-term high-impact effects that others might miss. Beliefs are your filter for finding those non-obvious, dramatically better actions.
And beliefs are inherently predictive then. They let you project where your current path is leading.
Absolutely. You use your beliefs about cause and effect. If I do X, then Y will happen to extrapolate your current actions forward. This shows you where you're likely headed.
So you can decide if that's where you want to go.
Exactly. And identify changes needed before you get there rather than reacting later.
What happens when those predictions don't match reality? When Y doesn't happen after X?
The source says you must modify your beliefs. It's non-negotiable for progress. It uses the analogy of an orienteer comparing their map to the actual terrain.
If they don't match, you trust the terrain and fix the map.
Precisely. Fix the belief. Writing down your beliefs helps identify these errors more easily. The book is very clear. It's better to be openly, knowingly ignorant and adjust than to be dishonest with yourself when evidence contradicts what you believe.
So continuous belief refinement based on evidence is essential for staying aligned with reality.
Critical.
The book also argues we're already living by subconscious beliefs, right? Developed through trial and error, like knowing hunger means eat.
Yes, absolutely. We all operate on beliefs constantly. The task isn't to invent beliefs from scratch, but to make these existing, often subconscious beliefs conscious, then evaluate their accuracy and intentionally improve them.
And strength in a belief, confidence, comes from living it, seeing it work.
Without question. You build confidence in your beliefs by putting them into practice and seeing the expected outcomes manifest. You can't just think your way to confidence. You have to take action based on what you believe.
Okay, now here's a fascinating, almost counterintuitive point from the source. You change your desires by changing your beliefs.
This is a really critical insight, I think. The source argues that attempts to directly force yourself to want something different, like I should want to exercise more, are usually doomed to fail.
Why is that?
Because desire, according to this model, stems entirely from your beliefs about what is valuable. To genuinely change what you desire, you have to find convincing reasons, evidence, compelling arguments to believe something else is more valuable.
So you have to change the underlying belief about its worth first.
Exactly. It's about convincing your rational mind of a different reality model, a different value proposition, not just wishing you felt differently or trying to use willpower alone.
Okay, wow. Purpose, qualities with principles rules, values with Pareto and ranking, beliefs with reality modeling, prediction, and changing desires. That brings us to goals.
Right. Goals are simpler in a way. They're just what you want, the specific desired outcomes.
Okay.
Think of them as the bridge, where your understanding of what's important, values, and how the world works, beliefs, translates into concrete targets, goals. And those goals then directly inform your daily steps.
What's your tasks, the final piece?
Exactly. Tasks are what you actually do day to day to get those goals.
This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Completely. Tasks are the specific daily actions that bring your entire plan to life. This is where qualities are embodied, values are expressed, goals are pursued, and beliefs are tested in reality. Everything you actually accomplish is ultimately the result of your daily tasks.
So the plan's main purpose, then, is to help identify the most effective daily tasks, the ones that give the most bang for your buck towards your purpose.
Precisely. And the tool for this is the daily to-do list. The source elevates this massively. It's not just a list of chores.
It's more fundamental than that.
Way more. It's presented as the absolutely essential tool for transferring the macro plan, your purpose, values, goals, down to micro execution. It's not just what to do. It provides the fundamental reason and motivation for each task by explicitly linking it back up to your transcendent purpose.
So if you feel unmotivated, you look at the task, and the plan tells you why it matters in the grand scheme.
Exactly. The answer from the plan is clear. I'm doing this specific, maybe unpleasant task because it's the next identified step that will lead me towards the greatest long-term joy. It provides that higher context.
Now, prioritizing these tasks by their potential impact seems key to efficiency. You mentioned Pareto earlier.
Yes, and it comes back here strongly. Focusing on high-impact tasks yields massive efficiency improvements. The source even talks about Pareto compounding.
Compounding, how does that work?
Yeah, think of it like this. If you consistently choose the most valuable task each hour, the high-value result from hour 1 might actually enable even higher value results in hour 2, or unlock new opportunities you wouldn't have had otherwise. It creates a powerful compounding effect, a geometric increase in benefit beyond just adding up task values.
Okay, that's a powerful incentive to prioritize well. The book also pushes for capturing all potential tasks whenever they come to mind, right? Not just when you have time.
Yeah, onto some kind of unsorted list or inbox. The idea is to prevent things from falling through the cracks, yes, but also to free up your mental bandwidth. You don't have to keep juggling them in your head.
And it enables proactive problem solving.
That's a key benefit highlighted. Seeing potential issues or tasks logged allows you to address them proactively when you choose, which almost always requires far fewer resources, time, energy, money, than reacting to a crisis later when the problem blows up.
Okay, so we have the whole framework laid out, connecting purpose down to daily, prioritized tasks captured on a list. How does the book guide you in actually living this plan day to day and navigating the inevitable challenges? One big point was separating thinking from working.
Yes, a critical distinction. Planning is building the machine. That's when you explore possibilities, weigh options, make decisions based on your framework. It's uncertain, potentially infinite.
Right.
Execution is running the machine. That requires laser-like focus on the specific task at hand from your list. When executing, the advice is to turn off external distractions and internal second-guessing. You shift from the infinite, uncertain world of planning to the well-defined, discrete world of doing.
Makes sense. This whole system sounds like it requires a significant amount of consistency and discipline.
It certainly does. But the source, interestingly, redefines discipline. It's not presented as a lack of freedom, but as how you use your freedom.
How you use freedom.
Okay. Ideally, according to the plan, every action you take should originate from your prioritized to-do list. It demands radical honesty with yourself, avoiding excuses for deviating just because something else feels easier or more comfortable in the moment.
So discipline is the intentional application of freedom towards your chosen purpose.
That's a good way to put it. It's using your freedom to create the life you've intentionally designed, not just reacting to impulses.
But the plan itself?
Yeah.
It isn't meant to be rigid and unchanging, is it? What if you realize part of it is wrong?
Not at all rigid. The source stresses that the life plan is iterative. It's a living document, a tool you should expect to change regularly based on new learning, new experiences, updated beliefs about value and reality.
So don't get stuck with sunk costs.
Exactly. Don't fall into the sunk cost fallacy. The book argues it's always better to execute an imperfect plan now and refine it based on real-world feedback than to get stuck endlessly trying to create a perfect plan that never actually launches.
Changes to the plan aren't failures. They're evidence of learning.
Precisely. They show you're adapting and growing.
Okay. This brings us to another major theme. Handling emotions versus using reason. This seemed pretty central.
Hugely central. The source contrasts two decision-making models very starkly.
Where are they?
One is the typical emotional model. Feeling triggers a reaction, and then reason scrambles to justify the reaction after the fact.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
The other is the proposed rational model. The environment, or an internal state, triggers reason, applying your framework, values, beliefs, which leads to deliberate action, and then feelings result from the action and its outcomes.
So reason drives the action, feelings follow.
That's the core argument. Emotions are presented as vital signals. They tell you that something needs attention, that there's a deviation from expectation or desire, but they are terrible guides for telling you what specific action to take.
Why terrible?
Because they're often based on immediate comfort, fear, or past conditioning, not on a rational assessment of long-term value according to your purpose. Reason, guided by your values and beliefs about reality, is presented as the only reliable source for finding the path to enduring positive feelings and effectively mitigating negative ones.
And maximizing that long-term joy often involves, well, not feeling joyful in the short term, maybe even feeling bad.
Definitely. The source is quite blunt here. Immediate pleasure often directly competes with long-term joy, and you must choose which you prioritize. It's like the difference between navigating by the path of least resistance, just following current feelings, versus using a map and compass, your rational plan.
What feels good now might be the opposite of what's actually good long-term.
Often is, the book argues. It also says that meaning dictates how something feels, and meaning is something you can consciously change through interpretation. Your internal perspective can transcend external circumstances. Joy derived from meaning is far more stable and enduring than fleeting physical pleasure.
And a critical point you mentioned. Your feelings do not justify your actions. Only valid reasons do.
Yes, that's a core tenet. The source suggests that an irrationally emotional society prioritizes feelings over reality, but enduring positive feelings can only come from alignment with reality, and reality is discovered and navigated through reason, not feelings alone.
So if feelings aren't the guide, and you can't just focus on them, how do you actually change how you feel? especially if you're feeling bad or unmotivated.
By changing how you act, that's the lever. Act according to how you want to feel later, based on your rational plan, maybe especially if it feels difficult or unpleasant right now.
So it's like an investment.
Exactly. It's framed as an investment of current, potentially negative feelings for greater future positive feelings, like getting a cash windfall. Spend it now for fleeting pleasure or invest it for significant long-term growth.
And the source says good choices often front-load the suffering.
They tend to, yes. Good choices often require upfront effort, discipline, discomfort. Poor choices often offer immediate ease or pleasure, but delay the negative consequences, which then arrive with much higher interest.
Okay. What about those days when you're just stuck?
Yeah.
Unmotivated, in a genuinely bad mood, can't seem to get going.
The source has advice for that too. It suggests switching your fuel source. If short-term motivation from pleasure or immediate reward is absent, you consciously tap into your long-term purpose.
Like a backup generator.
Sort of, yeah. Like anaerobic respiration kicking in when oxygen is low for an athlete. You rely on laser-like, almost robotic focus on executing the very next item from your prioritized to-do list. No second guessing, just do the task.
Just keep moving forward, even if it's slowly.
Exactly. The action itself can generate momentum and often shift your internal state more effectively than just sitting there thinking about how bad you feel.
There was also this powerful idea for tackling difficult tasks called vanquishing. What was that about?
Yeah, I like this one too. When you're faced with a task you find particularly hard or unpleasant, and you feel tempted to quit or cut corners, you voluntarily go beyond what is strictly required. You intentionally make it a bit harder for yourself right at that point of resistance.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Seems counterintuitive.
To build long-term motivation and confidence. It provides irrefutable evidence to yourself that you do not take shortcuts, that you can push through difficulty. It proves you're stronger than the temptation to ease up.
Like making deposits into your confidence account, as you said earlier.
Exactly. High interest deposits. And the source also notes that this kind of commitment to exemplary performance, even in small things, can sometimes inspire or catalyze improvement in those around you who witness it.
Interesting. Now, in this rational view of intentional living, the source suggests every single moment has maximum potential value, if used correctly.
Yes, because every moment, viewed through the lens of the plan, is connected back to that highest level purpose and meaning. If you use the moment in the best possible way according to your plan, it has the greatest possible value in moving you towards maximal joy.
That sounds intense, like a lot of pressure.
It can sound that way, but the book frames it as making life more manageable. By recognizing and taking conscious responsibility for the choices you make in each moment, you gain control. You're no longer just swept along.
And it specifically mentioned the early morning.
Yeah, as ideal for deep work, planning, and tackling the most important tasks, due to typically higher mental energy and maybe a sense of hope or clarity then.
And from this perspective, there's no real free time.
Only time that is used intentionally for maximum value, which could include rest or leisure if planned and aligned with values, or time that is essentially wasted, not contributing to your purpose.
Okay. And finally, on the individual side, the source briefly touched on optimizing your environment and tools. Seems practical.
It is. Just a reminder to consciously choose and arrange your physical environment, things like temperature, lighting, order, even beauty, because they do affect your state and productivity.
And preparing your tools, sharpening the axe.
Right. The classic analogy. But it applies to modern life too. Is your computer slow and frustrating? Is your car unreliable? Don't let suboptimal tools or environment create unnecessary friction or drag on your efforts. Optimize them.
Okay, so that covers the whole individual framework and living it day to day.
Yeah.
What about relationships? How does this system view interactions with other people? It applied Pareto here too, right?
It did, quite directly. It argues that roughly 80% of the meaning, usefulness, or joy you derive from your relationships likely comes from just 20% of the people you interact with.
The vital few, again.
Exactly. And even within those most valuable relationships, maybe 80% of the value comes from only 20% of the actual interactions or time spent together.
So the advice is pretty clear then.
Very clear. Spend 80% of your relationship time and energy focused on that critical 20% of people. And within those relationships, learn to recognize and consciously maximize those high-value interactions.
This means actively curating your social life, not just letting it happen.
Absolutely. The source really pushes back against the cultural tendency to equate social busyness with fulfillment. It argues fulfillment comes from value, not volume.
So less surface-level interaction, more depth with the right people.
That's the idea. It means being clear and vocal about what matters to you, saying no thoughtfully to interactions or events you don't genuinely value. And crucially, asking the important people in your life what truly matters to them while also clearly communicating what matters to you. This applies across family, friendships, work.
Cutting the small talk and optional interactions that don't contribute. That sounds potentially harsh, but it's consistent with the core principle of intentionality.
It is consistent. It's about directing your finite time and energy where it has the most impact according to your values. Stop being equally available to everyone. Things like setting boundaries on email response times or phone calls are part of this.
And it got even more pointed, suggesting stopping effort with people who don't reciprocate.
Yeah, it was quite direct. Stop investing effort in relationships where the other person clearly doesn't care or reciprocate. It even suggested potentially having a personal rule, like defining how many times you'll reach out with no response before you just stop.
Wow. Like the treat those who ghost me as if they were dead idea you mentioned. That's stark.
It is stark, but it emphasizes the principle. Recognize where value flows and where it doesn't, and allocate your resources accordingly. Don't pour energy into black holes.
How does the book suggest you actually find these 20% people, the high-value ones?
It lists some characteristics to look for.
Yeah.
People who don't waste time on shallow or uninteresting interactions. They actively seek improvement in themselves and maybe others. They often disregard limiting social conventions.
March to their own drum.
Right. They say and do what they actually believe. They're always learning. They prefer new and interesting ideas over rehashing the same old things. They appreciate deep meaning and tend to abhor shallowness.
The core message seems to be, seek out people who challenge you and catalyze your growth.
Exactly. Not just those who are comfortable or who comfort you in your current state, but those who push you to become better.
The source also talked about people creating friction and drag in your life. What's the difference?
Good question. Friction is described as resistance that often comes from your own faults interacting with the world or others' reactions to you. This tends to lessen as you improve and become more effective.
Okay, and drag.
Drag is resistance specifically against your purpose. It's someone or something actively hindering your progress towards your goals, maybe someone unwilling to meet reasonable expectations you need met to move forward together.
And how do you reduce that drag?
2 main ways suggested. Change yourself, become stronger, less reactive, better at navigating difficult people, avoid their triggers. Or change who you spend significant time with, focus more energy on those high-value 20% people and less, or none, on those creating drag. Essentially, curate your interactions more carefully.
There was also that concept of gravitational pull.
Yeah, the idea that the people you interact with regularly will pull you towards their level, either up or down, their habits, their mindset, their level of intentionality, it rubs off.
So being around examples of improvement forces a choice.
Pretty much. You either have to step up to meet their level, or you'll find ways to diminish their example in your own mind to feel comfortable staying where you are.
And the source made a provocative point about who your best friends could be.
Right. That the best friends you can have are simply the best people who will tolerate you, and they don't even need to be local or currently alive.
Meaning you can learn from biographies, historical figures, people you admire through media.
Exactly. Surround yourself mentally with examples of exceptional lives and thinking, even if not physically.
Reliability was also called out as having really outsized effects in relationships.
Tremendous effects. Unreliable people create huge hidden costs, the time spent chasing them, fixing their mistakes, the emotional stress, the planning overhead.
While reliable people free you up.
Completely. They free up mental energy and practical resources, allowing you to focus on higher value things. So the advice is twofold. Strive to be reliable yourself and consciously build your life and collaborations around other reliable people.
Makes sense. And finally, how did the source suggest boosting productivity specifically when working with others, assuming they are somewhat reliable?
A couple of key things. 1, delegate tasks that others are willing and able to do, especially if those tasks are less difficult or less important for you than for them, or just lower on your priority list.
Okay.
And crucially, don't let waiting on others become a bottleneck where you do nothing. Use your own prioritized task list to keep making progress on your next most important items while you're waiting.
So following up is just another task.
Exactly. Following up on dependencies is just another task on your list. Scheduled and prioritized like everything else. You stay proactive.
Wow. Okay. So bringing this all together then, the system presented in Joy and Purpose argues that achieving this Unparalleled productivity and maximal joy isn't luck, it isn't magic.
No, it's presented as the direct, logical result of living intentionally through this interconnected framework, consciously aligning your purpose, your qualities, your values, beliefs, goals, and tasks.
All culminating in disciplined, prioritized daily action based on that rational plan.
Yeah, and it clearly demands choosing reason over fleeting emotion, consistently prioritizing that often non-obvious long-term gain over easy short-term comfort.
And actively curating your environment and, importantly, your relationships to support your chosen purpose.
It's a comprehensive system.
It really is.
Yeah.
And hopefully this framework offers a potent structure for you, the listener, to maybe cut through some of the information overload we all face, to find genuine aha moments perhaps, and gain knowledge that truly matters by focusing intensely on what aligns with your deepest values and your chosen purpose.
And the source makes that pretty sobering claim we touched on, that most people are, in its words, terribly unhappy and experience hardly any joy at all.
Yeah.
Yet, based on that same Pareto distribution principle it keeps coming back to, it suggests it's mathematically possible for the most joyous person to experience, well, thousands or even millions of times more joy than the statistical average.
Which leaves us with a final powerful thought to consider, doesn't it? Given that potentially vast gap between average misery and exceptional joy, what does that imply about the true level of intentionality, the difficult choices, the cost, perhaps, required to live a life truly different from the norm?
Is that immense difference, that potential for extreme joy, simply a function of recognizing and being willing to pay a non-obvious price, a price that most people maybe aren't willing or even able to see, let alone bear?
Something to think about.